Ponyville Library was in a tree. Not a tree house, but literally inside a tree. A massive, gnarled tree bigger than most buildings had been grown in the middle of the town, clearly the project of magic, and hollowed out to be a public library. The south side of the tree was scorched black and dead, but there were still a few leaves clinging to life on the opposite branches. The tree was surrounded by a wide open space with absolutely no cover. Any hope my luck at Carousel Boutique would hold out here was dashed when I looked up to the highest balcony and finally spotted the sniper pony, an earth pony armed with a powerful-looking rifle. The rifle was attached to the balcony railing with a gliding swivel mount, allowing the raider to aim it wherever she could see. The only safe approach was from directly behind her, where the door to the balcony and the narrow top of the tree beyond blocked her line of sight. There were surely more raider ponies inside. Sneaking up carefully from the only direction that wouldn't mean instant death, I was trembling with nerves by the time I reached the door. As swiftly and silently as I could, I slipped out of Ponyville and straight into hell. Pony corpses everywhere. Not like the bridge where ponies had fallen in battle. These ponies had been mutilated, desecrated, and put on display. Some poor pony's body hung from the ceiling, head and hooves severed, and flesh sliced open and pulled back to reveal the meat and bones beneath. Heads and limbs hung from chains like sick party decorations. The rotting body of a pink pony with a violet mane was mounted, spread-eagled over a bookcase with railroad spikes. 2 had been driven into her eyes. On another wall, a torso had been skinned and sliced open, the pony's entrails pulled out to decorate the shelves like streamers. Blood and gore was everywhere, dripping from the ceiling and painting the walls in equal parts with the graffiti that had somehow even gotten worse and more mocking and cruel. Between the bookcases, pre-war posters were mounted in shattered frames. Some raider pony had painted over one of them, reading his magic, with a crude but effective depiction of a megaspell detonation. Another, the most beautiful ponies have the most beautiful minds, was covered over by a painting that was just simply pornographic. The books had been burned in piles. The floor was layered in ash and filth. The stench was unbearable. The room was dominated by 3 cages, 2 large square ones and a smaller one hanging from the ceiling, which was barely big enough for a pony. Captives, filthy, beaten, and misused, were curled up inside, their hooves tied together with stained rope. The 2 in the nearest cage looked at me pitifully, and my heart wrenched painfully. My eyes kept going wider until I had to clench them shut and bite my own hoof to keep from screaming. I backed against the door, heaving, unable to breathe properly, not wanting to breathe this air at all. The horror of the room flooded over me, drowning me. I pulled my hoof away barely fast enough to avoid vomiting my apple all over myself. The stench of it mixed with the reek of the room, assaulting me further. "Please," a whisper from one of the ponies, terrified to raise her voice. "Help us." This was beyond horror. I pressed my eyes tighter and tighter, then opened them as a wave of brutal determination cut through the sickness. "Please, help." That was no voice, disembodied and trapped in an internal loop, coming from some radio signal floating through the ether. These were living ponies. They were right here in front of me, and they needed help. And I was as damned as these rotten raiders if I was going to make them beg again. The screwdriver and bobby pin slipped out and immediately began working on the nearest lock. With a click, the metal cage door swung open. Inside, 2 ponies, bound and laying in their own filth. I realized uncomfortably that I had nothing to cut the ropes with. I tried to untie them with my magic. The first pony's ropes were so wet with blood that I could pull them apart, but the second ponies were bound too tightly. Are you for real?" The first pony stood shakenly. I'm free?" I nodded, then glanced to the other ponies. I had no idea how I'd reached the one hanging in the cage. "If you could help me with—" The pony blanched and shook her mane. "Oh, no, can't stay here any longer. But here, take these supplies. I managed to squirrel them away." The pony dug into the floor muck with her hoof, revealing the utterly pathetic pile of scraps laying on a dirty rag that amounted to her entire worldly possessions. A can of diced carrots, a box of pre-war single-serve cake, a handful of bottle caps. It broke my heart. "No, you keep it. You'll need it more." I paused, my eye catching a single shotgun shell in the place of the pile. "Actually, I'll take this shell. Thanks." I magically opened the shotgun and slid it into place. Now I had two. The pony had already folded up the rag, picked it up in her teeth, and slinked rapidly out the door before I could say anything else. I sent up a prayer to Celestia for her, and focused on saving the others. I looked over the second pony, who hadn't said a word, and recoiled as I saw the blood caking the inside of her flanks. What had these raiders done? Looking around, I took in the shape of the room, trying to blot out the horrors everywhere I turned. Above the front door was an aged fresco of a beautiful white-winged unicorn. Celestia? Unusually large and graceful, a book floating in front of her, her wings outstretched over a rainbow of foals as they smiled up and listened to story time. Not only had the ponies been painted over with images of blood, and knives, and violence, the fresco had been used for target practice, everything from bullets to flung excrement, and was now shattered and stained unspeakably. The room was oddly shaped, with balconies and rooms branching, literally, off in all directions. I could hear the voices of raider ponies in the other rooms, and, judging from the decor, knives wouldn't be far behind. "I'll be right back," I promised with a whisper. Then, levitating the combat shotgun, I moved towards the nearest interior door. I jumped back as the door swung open at me. A raider pony stepped through and stopped, staring at me blankly. His coat was dark black under his makeshift armor, his mane wild. Holsters were strapped to his flanks, one with a small gun, the other holding a blade whose edge was jagged like a saw, ensuring the most grievous of wounds. In stark, horrified disbelief, I saw that his cutie mark was actually a splayed torso. The raider pony recovered quickly, swinging his head around and drawing out the small gun in his teeth. What was he going to do? Pull the trigger with his tongue? Just before Sats helped me pump my 2 shotgun rounds into his face. I felt no remorse as his head turned into spaghetti sauce that splattered over his instantly lifeless body. I hadn't just killed a pony. These raiders had given up any right to the title. These were not ponies. These were sick monsters that needed to be put down. And Celestia helped me if I wasn't going to do just that. I didn't realize it until that moment, but I was mad. The pure evil of this place had shaken me to the core, and my core was furious. Collecting knife and gun, I dropped the empty combat shotgun to the side. The smaller weapon was not going to be as powerful, but it was fully loaded, 6 shots in a revolving barrel. And that was good, because there was no way that noise wasn't going to bring every raider pony running. The first 3 raider ponies galloped into the main library almost immediately, one of them crying out thrilled insults. Sats helped me fire 3 shots at her head. The first 2 missed, but the third found a home in one of her ugly red eyes, and she went down. A second started firing another small firearm at me. What do you know? They do shoot with their tongues. Bullets impacting the doorframe. One shot punctured one of my saddlebags, but didn't pierce flesh. I crouched and poked my head around, levitating the revolver in the open doorway. I fired 2 shots at the second pony, but my pip-buck's targeting spell was refreshing, and without it, I might as well have been aiming at the ceiling. Still, the gunslinger raider skittered away, using one of the captive ponies as cover. The dishonorableness poured gasoline on the fire of my anger. I stepped fully into the doorway, looking for the third, spotting him on the far end of the main room. The third raider pony lowered his head, a pull cue clenched in his teeth, and charged at me. I blinked. Really? I took a single step back, The pony rushed at me full tilt, and was nearly on me when the ends of the pool cues struck the doorway, snapping him to a stop. I fired the revolver's last shot point blank into his neck. I didn't need sats at that range. Shouldn't you ponies be smarter than that? You live in a library. As the pony body slumped to the floor, bleeding from the gaping wound through its neck, I saw the gun-wielding raider standing in the open, aiming through the door. I dived to the side as shots rang out, and screamed as I felt a bullet sink into my side. It hurt, more than I thought it would. I fell against the wall, leaving a bloody smear as I collapsed next to the doorway. Pain seared my side, flaring with each breath. I could hear the clop of the raider pony's hooves as he approached cautiously. I tried to focus my magic to close the door, but the body of the pool cue pony was in the way. I cast about the room. It was a kitchen. On the table, surrounded by knives, was the body of a fearsome creature of scales and teeth. The raider pony with the splayed torso cutie mark had been carving it up to cook. A refrigerator and oven. There were scattered books, but all ancient, destroyed, and unreadable. I was beginning to doubt the watcher's assertion that there was a book here like he described. Then my eyes fell on what I was hoping for. In one corner, mounted on the wall over several metal boxes of ammunition, was a faded yellow box with a pink butterfly symbol on it. A medical box. Double luck, the box looked to be locked. There were knife scrapes all over it where the raider ponies had attempted to get it open. It should have a few medical poultices, and maybe even a healing potion. But I had to survive the raider pony first, and I was wounded and out of bullets. Crossing to the ammo boxes would mean moving across the open doorway. Scooting back, I looked around again, and focused my magic through the pain. When the raider pony stepped in, he was met by a swarm of knives flying at his face. Gah! He turned and fled back out. The knives either all missed or struck uselessly against his armor. I was even more pathetic with melee weapons than I was with guns. But I got him out of the way long enough to make it for the ammo boxes. Luck was with me again. While one box had ammo in large clips for a type of gun I had yet to see, the other had bullets designed for the revolver. The raider pony poked his head around again, calling out, "You're all out of knives, missy. Why don't you just come out? I promise I'll let you die. Eventually." His head turned in my direction. His eyes went wide. I don't know if it was the look in my eyes or the revolver. Sats was with me again, and this bastard wasn't going to get another chance to use a raped and beaten victim as a shield. One more dead raider, and picked medical box and a healing potion later, I trotted quietly back into the main room, serrated knife floating by my side. I moved to the open cage and sawed away the ropes binding the poor pony. "Go! You're free. Get somewhere safe." With a blink, I remembered the sniper pony and quickly told her which direction to sneak away in. She nodded mutely and began to slink out. I moved to the next cage. What I saw sickened me. A pony had been locked inside along with a decaying corpse. The pony was whimpering in her sleep, and her tail wrapped around the ghastly body like Teddy Ursa. Unlike the other bodies, I couldn't tell how this one had died, for it wasn't carved apart. The body had lost all its coat. Its skin was a sickening blotchwork of red and gray, flaking away. Its eyes were open, dry, and staring in wrong directions. Its teeth were horridly yellow, matching the few strands of hair left in its mane and tail. Odd, fleshy growths hung from its sides. At first, I mistook them for mutations, but then I realized I was looking at the pony's wings. This was the body of a Pegasus pony. Stripped of feathers and hair, the wings looked strange, even repulsive. I screamed, a full-throated cry of terror, when the corpse shifted position and sat up, its eyes sliding around until they both focused on me. It was a zombie pony. The zombie pony blinked at me, then tried to get up, only to fall over into one winged side, as its hooves were bound into ropes like the others. It She stared at me plaintively.